What I photograph is money. It's actually money that we're taking from our grandchildren and taking it for ourselves. Every product, everything we buy, everything we spend money on has invisible costs. Those costs are hidden costs that usually result in some kind of environmental degradation, even the plastic Jesus. A roll of toilet paper, as mundane as it may be, is a perfect example. It seems, who even thinks about their toilet paper? That roll of toilet paper is the cause of deforestation, which of course means climate change, and the cause of massive pollution. But it doesn't have to be. We can buy, with the same euro, we can buy a different roll of toilet paper and support a whole nother product stream. We can support the product stream of recycling, repurposing. Aluminum, which is one of the most environmental degradations, tremendous user of electricity. I think it's the number one industrial cause, the number one industrial user of electricity, is yet another product that if we recycle one aluminum can, we save enough electricity to power the computer for 3 hours. Here we see the waste from the making of aluminum. You may remember last year, 1 million cubic meters of toxic waste spilled into the Danube at an aluminum plant in Hungary. What I do requires a number of partners. Generally, I fly to see these things, and I have the pilots that fly me, and then I have the environmental groups who provide me with the information that I need to understand what I'm seeing, and then they use the pictures that I'm taking to hopefully enact change. As I see it, we live on a small rock, really, which we share with a number of plants and animals in a rather complex system, which is very carefully balanced. Of course, as humans, we have this great intelligence which allows us to game the system, if you will. It allows us to take more than our share. And in so doing, what we do is we push those systems into imbalance. So these systems which are providing us with essentially free services, clean air, clean water, as we push those systems into failure, we will ultimately have to pay, or our children will have to pay, to replace those services. In actual fact, what we're doing, it's a massive transfer of wealth between the people who are profiting from these extractive processes and our grandchildren. So, since we're talking about energy, I'm going to talk about some of the projects I've done specifically that are energy related, and we'll start in the USA in West Virginia. This is one of the most biodiverse regions in the world. It's called the Cumberland Plateau, and it's also the drinking water source for millions of Americans. You can see here where the mountain has been removed. That mountain was in the way of the coal. And literally what we do is we blast the mountain and scrape up the coal. Unfortunately, we're only getting 6% of the coal, but who cares? Our grandchildren will pay for it. I have a lot of pictures to show you, so forgive me, I move quickly. And here we see a stream that's been poisoned by acid mine drainage. And here we see the waste from the washing of coal. When it's all over, once that mountain has been destroyed and the coal is taken, the only required remediation is that the coal companies level the ground and spread an invasive grass seed mixed with fertilizer. One of the interesting things about these extractive processes is they never enrich the communities where it happens. They always impoverish them. This is Twilight, West Virginia, very aptly named. This is the post office, if you can imagine, in Twilight, West Virginia. No one lives there anymore, and certainly no one uses the post office. I started this project by photographing industrial things. I had this idea of making art that really moved people because I saw that there was a problem. I think now many of us see that there's a problem, except for Americans, of course, where 50% of my country still doesn't believe in climate change. I apologize for that. And though I really like these pictures, still to this day, that's a cement plant in Senegal, they didn't carry the message that I wanted, and they didn't move people. Many times I was arrested and thrown out. I even got into the habit of carrying a spare roll of film in my pocket, so when the police came, I could quickly switch the film in the camera and say, "Oh, okay, well, I'll leave here. You take the film. I'll leave. Just please don't arrest me." It usually worked. But still, the pictures, they didn't do what I wanted. This picture we see, it's very important. It's of deforestation for the making of paper, but it doesn't move you. It won't change your behavior, and that's really what I want, is a change of behavior. And so here, I'm in an airplane on a commercial flight, and I looked down and I saw this power plant, which was surrounded by a foggy river, and it suddenly occurred to me that there's the answer, just get above it. And then it became just a logistical question of hiring an airplane and flying above these things. So I started on the Mississippi River, which has a unique place in American heritage. And here we see a plant where they make fluorocarbons, which of course are the cause of the hole in the ozone layer, propellants used for hairsprays and whatnot. This is the waste from the making of paper towels. You may not have heard of the people who own this plant. It's the Koch brothers. But I'm fairly certain you've heard of one of their favorite projects. They are the money behind the Tea Party. And with this, I had a realization that if I buy this brand of paper towels, then I'm supporting the Tea Party. And with that realization, I started to change my own behavior. And well, I won't buy paper towels at all anymore. I do buy toilet paper. And so I started to think about other ways that I could affect change. And once I had this idea of how to make art, of how to make these images, so I next moved on to coal ash. Now, you probably don't spend too much time thinking about coal ash. In America, we only think about it because we had a major industrial spill in Tennessee. But coal ash is actually quite toxic. And in Germany, we make about 46% of our electricity from burning coal. It's about the same in the United States. And the coal ash contains numerous very toxic things: mercury, which you call quicksilver, lead, arsenic, uranium, chromium, which is quite toxic. Here we see an impoundment of coal ash, which is literally looming over these houses. And if this impoundment breaks, which they do every couple of months, there's a new one breaking, then these houses will be washed away because the volume of coal ash in there. In the United States, we burn 1 billion tons of coal a year and produce about 130 million tons of ash. It's almost inconceivable to imagine this volume. These are various coal ashes at various plants around the United States. And here's one in the Lausitz region. You have this problem here in Germany, though I haven't heard it discussed much. It probably will be at some point. Because what happens is when the coal ash comes into contact with water, those toxins leach into the groundwater. And of course, arsenic, which is very water soluble and a real problem with coal ash, is not something you want to drink. This is a coal ash in Garzweiler, and we can see this worker spraying the hot coal ash with water. Now we're going to move back to the North American continent. And this is the tar sands. And you may not have heard of the tar sands, but it's the second largest petroleum reserve in the world after Saudi Arabia. All of the international oil companies are involved in the extraction of tar sands. It also happens to be one of the most valuable wetland areas in the world. And it's the store of a tremendous amount of carbon, which is, of course, released in the extraction process. It's a rather mundane and typical extraction process, other than the scale, which is vast. And you can see here the machine scraping the carbon down to the bucket trucks, which will then take it to the refinery. And the machines are all powered with electricity, interestingly. So here's one of the refineries. It's a very dirty refining process, and one of the largest byproducts is sulfur, which of course they extract because it's not allowed to have sulfur in the petrol. The red, interestingly, a lot of what I do is research. It took me a good while to figure out what the red was. It's special, isn't it? It looks like the blood of the earth. The red is actually molten sulfur. Sulfur is one of the only, I think the only mineral which changes viscosity as it gets warmer. The other byproduct of the tar sands process is vast lakes of waste liquid. They're called the tailings ponds. So many migrating waterfowl were landing in these tailings ponds and dying that the tar sands petroleum companies started to put air cannons to hopefully scare away the landing waterfowl. There are First Nation people who live at the top of this river. It's called the Athabasca River. And not surprisingly, they're seeing numerous very rare types of cancer in their population. We're going to switch now to the southern United States. You may remember the Gulf spill last year. In the United States, we've mostly forgotten about it. And here we see one of the planes spraying dispersants over the Gulf spill. The actual name of it is the Macondo spill, although it's most known as the Deepwater spill after the rig the drill rig which crashed and burned. Photographing it, well, first when it happened, I thought as an artist, can I do something is it worth me going? Can I do something that hasn't been done there? Because of course it was very well covered. And I decided I had to try. So I connected with a pilot there, Tom Hutchings. He's one of my heroes. And we flew 7 times over this spill. And it really was like being in a war zone. I would come back to New York and people would say, well, what's it like? And you can't describe. I had an insight into what it's like to be a war journalist, because the horror, and it really was horrible, it goes to your stomach. You can't even talk about it. And I found that when I went back to New York, I had to call Tom every day and see what he saw that day and what's the news and when should I come back. And of course, you may not know, it's leaking again. It's not well reported in the news. One of the things these are various oils on the water that you see here. Many different weights of oil came out of this site. One of the things that's important for me is that we're all part of these processes. And I was fascinated by the talk earlier about the gentleman who tried to reduce his carbon footprint to, I forget the number. And I've really changed my lifestyle to try to reduce my footprint in every way possible. So this is one of the rigs that's drilling the relief well. And again, the well is leaking as we speak. And I expect, even though British Petroleum said that they were going to cap it and go away, I suspect that they will extract that oil. Does it matter? I don't know if it matters. The oil first hit on the western side of the Mississippi River Delta in what's called Barataria Bay. And of course, it's a very valuable wildlife refuge. And many pelicans are born there. And pelicans, I feel very special about pelicans. So this is on the edge of a pelican rookery. So it was very sad for me, and it's very painful, really, to see these things. You almost have to cut off your emotions in some way. And now we come to Germany because of course, you've made the recent decision to abandon nuclear power. And I think this is a good decision, but it will force us to rely more on coal mining. So that 46% number will probably increase unless in Germany we decide to buy the power from the French who are building nuclear plants on the border here. Bless their hearts. So you probably know the processes. These bucket wheel excavators first remove the earth from over the coal, and then they take the coal and move it on conveyors to the Kraftwerk. Forgive me not speaking German. And these are the teeth of the bagger, which you know, I find these machines fascinating. In some ways, they are the pinnacle of our ability as humans, the making of these giant machines. They're quite special, and the drill rigs that we saw previously I marvel at these things. This machine is spreading the overburden, the earth that covers the coal. They must move it out of their way to get to the coal. And so he's spreading it in a very pretty pattern on the exhausted side of the mine. And that's what I look for. I look for these patterns. How can I make the beautiful picture of something horrible? Because this dissonance that I'm creating with this work causes us to stop and think about it. If it wasn't a beautiful picture of something horrible, I don't think it would be effective. We wouldn't stop, and we wouldn't think about what's my relationship to this thing. We're going to jump again to another topic. This is, I know in Germany you're very concerned about the Russian Erdgas, the natural gas that Germany relies on from Russia. And you'll soon be told that you should drill into the Erdgas that's trapped in the shale layers below Germany. It's about 2 kilometers down in the earth. And we're fighting this battle in the USA, specifically around New York, where the gas companies want to drill in these watershed areas. This is the Catskills, and it's the source of the water for New York City. And the gas companies are saying, well, we can drill safely there, don't worry about it. The way this works is, you can see in this picture that you've taken a wild area and you've made it into an industrial area. And we're told that this is okay, it will repair itself. But these areas never repair themselves. So the way this process works is we drill down into the shale layer, and then we drill horizontally in the shale layer, and then we pump millions of gallons of water to fracture this layer of shale and release the gas trapped there. The water's mixed with many chemicals, many of which are toxic, thanks to Halliburton and the government previous to this one. That toxic recipe is kept secret. And not only that, they're exempt from clean water regulations. We have many things to thank the Bush administration for. Here we see the waste from the drilling. These are the cuttings, which, by the way, it's radioactive, these shale layers. So these cuttings are, not to mention the heavy metal drilling muds, are very toxic and, again, radioactive. And so once they drill, they must fracture the layer of rock. And this picture gives you some sense of the volume of water that's needed for each fracking. Millions of liters of water, should I say millions and millions of liters of water per well. And here we see the trucks. These are compressor trucks. They're arranged around the wellhead to do the fracturing. And it's, again, you will be pushed here in Germany to engage in this process. And I would urge you to think very carefully about it, because it's not a safe process. The gas industry has a lot of money and they control the media. And so the accidents, which occur roughly once every 2 weeks, once a month, are not reported very well. But that doesn't mean they don't happen, and that doesn't mean there's not a consequence. Here you can see that fracking operation is right next to a wetland. So I would say, given the millions of bars of pressure that's applied to that toxic liquid, there's no way that it doesn't migrate into, just logic tells us that it will migrate into these water bodies. And here we see a flare. When one sees a flare, one knows that there's been a problem. This was a site where there was a blowout, but of course, we never hear about them. So, in conclusion, I would say that I reject, many people say that, what can one person do? I'm one person. There's nothing I can do to make a difference. Why should I change my daily behavior? But I reject that notion because I think the actions of one person, aside from making a quantitative difference, I think the example that one person can give can affect so many around us. So I would urge you to think very carefully about the things that we do in every day, and hopefully we can all reduce our footprint and reduce those costs that we're passing on to our grandchildren. Thank you.